So before we get going, I want to give you just a little bit of contextual background as well as introduce what do we measure here at Culture Index, because there's a lot of what we measure, but there's also a lot that we don't measure. Um, well, I guess before I do all of that, I should introduce myself. So let's get started there. So my name is Lauren Vest, as you all know. I am an executive advisor with the company called Culture Index. So I work as an independent contractor with them. I do my own consulting on the side, and the tool that I have decided to go with the most is Culture Index because I just really love high validity and strong data, and they have both of those things. So I've vetted almost every tool out there in the market, from Enneagram to DISC to Myers-Briggs to predictive index, all of it. And this is my drug of choice, if you will, when it comes to helping consult with companies. Um, a personal story about Culture Index that I hope you can try to find something like this by the end of this is whenever I found Culture Index, someone read my survey to me. And for the longest time, for this past year, really, I was trying to articulate everything she said in that conversation. And she was able to do so in 5 minutes. And that's what sparked my ability to truly go out on my own and open my own consulting business. So it unlocked a part of me that I personally knew was there in my gut. And I felt like I could pursue it, but I was never put in the right seat at work to showcase it. So I didn't have any history and data to back me up what I was saying, what I knew was true about my brain. And I, from that point on, made it my mission to help any company that would allow me to help make sure that nobody felt that way within their company. I wanted to make sure that everybody's potential was seen for what it was, and that everybody has an opportunity to sit in a seat that acknowledges who they are and what their strengths are, so they could feel the power of those and not feel like they're less than because they've never gotten to showcase what they know is true about themselves. So that's just a missional value of mine. It's just people advocacy until you can advocate for yourself. And that's what I hope that you can gain from this is advocacy for yourself, but then also the desire to find out about other people so you can advocate for them as well within your teams, business, and relationships. So that's a little about me and my background. Now let's dig into Culture Index real quick. So at Culture Index, we measure 7 different traits, and those traits are autonomy, social ability, pace, or I like to say patience, conformity, aka rule following. And then we measure mental stamina, which is the EU number that you see. And then the L stands for logic, but what that really is measuring how much heart versus head that you have in your decision making. So how much logic versus emotion you lean to in that decision making. So not your IQ or anything like that, but rather how much of that on that spectrum of heart versus head you are with your decision making. Your eyes, ingenuity, or your raw inventiveness. So those are the 7 things that we do measure. And there's a lot of things that we can pull from those, but some areas that we don't measure, just to clarify, are anything to do with a mental diagnosis whatsoever. So autism, depression, anxiety. We can tell tendencies towards those, but we don't diagnose them whatsoever. We don't do anything with IQ or any EQ either. Again, measuring tendencies, but none of those are part of our survey traits. Um, and then we don't measure anything related to grit or passion or confidence levels, but rather we can tell you, again, tendencies of where those may show up and what that, trend is going to look like based on their traits. So the way that we measure them is in 2 different graphs. So if everybody will look at their graphs, what you'll see is there's 2 of them. This top one that you'll see is what we're really going to spend a lot of our time on first today, which is inherently who you are. So this is your natural state of being. This is saying, if I were to say, hey, be your most comfortable natural self at work, this is who you're going to show up as. And then the bottom graph is showing us how you're modifying yourself at work. So a good analogy of this that I like to say is if I were to say, hey, go put on a comfortable outfit, then you're probably going to go put on, for me, it's a big baggy t-shirt, my biker shorts, and my tennis shoes, because that's super comfortable and natural to me. But then if I said, hey, we're going to a wedding in an hour, and then you went and you changed your outfit, you did your hair and makeup, you put on the nice heels or the nice tux for the guys, and you modified a part of yourself that's not as natural. Are you able to put on that outfit? Yes. Is it going to be kind of uncomfortable in comparison to your natural? Yes. And so that's what this is showing is that ability to do so, but the uncomfortableness that comes with it. So we're actually going to do a quick little exercise. It's going to take us hopefully 30 seconds. If everybody could get a piece of paper and a pen real quick, it doesn't have to be anything, it's not serious. So scratch piece of paper, back of a water bottle label is fine, whatever works for you. A pen, pencil, writing utensil, anything works. When you've got it, just give me a thumbs up. Or you can say done in the chat, whatever works for you. Yep. Can you write on the Notion app? Like physically write with your hand? That's what I need you to be able to do. Physically write. Okay. Let's go. In the next 10 seconds, you only have 10 seconds, I want you to write your name as many times as you possibly can. Ready, set, go. Stop. Pens up. Let me see your pens. No cheating. Okay. All right, how many did we get? Shout out some numbers.
2,
2, 3, 4, 5.
7.
11. 7.
Oof.
Okay, nice. All right, now we're going to do this again, and we're going to see if we can beat our number. But this time, I want you to put it in your non-dominant hand. We ready? Go. Stop. Pens down. Okay. Did anyone beat their high score?
Does it have to be legible?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't guess. 2, nice. I see it, Guadalupe. That's great. Okay.
4.
Real quick, I'm going to use this analogy throughout this whole thing to kind of demonstrate the point because it can get lost sometimes of, are we capable of writing with our left hand? Yes. Or if you're left-handed, are we capable of writing with our right hand? Yes, right? Our non-dominant hand, we're still capable of doing it. But what happened? Eric, was it you that said, is it legible? Yeah. So quality decreases. Quantity decreases, right? Productivity as a whole decreases. And then I think it was maybe Gary where I heard a, ugh, as soon as we started it. So morale also decreases, right? There's a lot of things that we lose when we're writing with our left hand, or if you're the opposite, with your right hand, right? And so that's what we're trying to depict is how many areas in your work-related behaviors on your top graph are changing on the bottom, because that's how many areas in which you're writing with your non-dominant hand, for lack of a better words. Any questions so far, comments before we keep moving? Okay. What I'm going to ask you guys to do now is to zoom into your top graph. Only look at that for the next time being. And I'm going to explain to you how to read this thing. So we're going to start with the numbers 0 through 10 and that red line. You'll notice that only 4 of the 7 traits are on that red line. Basically, all that means is those 4 are in comparison to a normative trait versus the bottom is a more on a scale. So we're going to use these numbers 0 through 10 that you see at the top. We're going to use that as a ruler or a measuring stick, not as a scale. I'm going to say that again. We're going to use these numbers as a measuring stick, not as a scale. So what I mean by that is if you look at your dots and you say, oh, well, my red dot's on a 7, so I'm a 7 out of 10. No, that would be using as a scale. Instead, we're going to use it to compare it to this red line. So I want you to look at the red line, and then I want you to look at each dot, and I want you to put out beside each dot how many numbers away from the red line it is. If it's on the right side, I want you to put a plus and then how many numbers. If it's on the left side, I want you to put a minus and how many numbers. So for instance, this red line's at a 5. If my red dot is at a 6, then it's a +1. If it's on a 4, it's a -1. And I want you to be exact too. So if it's like right in the middle, it's a 0.5, 0.75, 0.25. Try to be as exact as possible. So take the time to quickly do that for your 4 traits. Okay. And why this is important is because this red line is representing the norm. So if I were to draw a bell curve up and over this red line, a bell curve tells us where most of the population lies, and the further away from that normative line in the middle of the bell curve, the further away you're getting from the population of people, or most of the population. Julia said, "Can you please send me the link?" Yes. Give me 1 second. Just sent, Julia. And then I'm also sending Al. Is Al in here?
Allison?
Yes,
Is it? No, it's Al Phip.
yes,
Oh,
thank
that's
you.
you. Oh, gotcha. I just sent it to you. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. What we're saying, bell curve. Okay, so going back to it, the closer to the red line, the closer to the normative range you are, and where more of the population lies, the further you get away, the less people that have that extreme of that trait. So this tells us how extreme a trait is. It also tells us how much energy it takes to change that part of you, which makes it also more or less predictable as well. So let's look at, sorry guys, I'm flipping back and forth between different things. Oh, also, I'm going to use the terms higher than and lower than as well. So I'm going to say high and low. All that means is that if it's high, it's on this side of the red line. If it's low, it's on this side of the red line. So when we look at our traits, when I say, hey, if you have a high A, I'm really talking about any of the A trait that's over here, or a low A over here. Okay. So looking at this, if we look at the statistical bell curve, if you go and you say that you were, so all of the numbers on the number line, for every 2 numbers that you get away from the red line, that is 1 sigma away. So when you see plus 1 sigma, if this, let's pretend this is on a 5, then this is 6, and this is 7. This is 8, this is 9. Does that make sense? Any questions with that? So if your A is plus 2 away, then you're right here at 1 sigma away. So you're in the 34.1%. aka you're in the somewhat high. So if you see the words down here, somewhat, if you get plus or minus 2 away, you're somewhat of that trait. If you're plus or minus the 2.1 to 4, you're in the very category. And then if yours is super far away, then you're in the extreme category. So keep that in mind when we're talking about these words of what describes a high A and a low A, because the more, or like the higher or the lower something is, the more extreme it is. So the more these words are going to resonate with you, versus if it's super close to that line, you may not resonate as much with all of them. You actually may resonate with a little bit of each side because it's closer to that red line. And I'll reiterate all of this as we go because it's a lot to take in. Okay. Any questions before we move on? Perfect. So good example here of why this is important. If you looked at it and said, oh my gosh, the red dot's on a 3, but over here it's an 8, it increased so much. No, it didn't. Because look at the red line and look how far it got away. It only got 1 away. So we're looking at how far away from the red line it is, not what number it is. Because the bell curve shifts with the red line. Okay? So let's jump into reading the survey. So everybody locate your red dot. If you have a high A, that's what I'm going to start with. If you have a low A, I still want you to pay attention to the other side of it because this is going to be the opposite of you and where some tensions may lie if you try to become this side of you because it's going to feel like writing with your non-dominant hand. So if you're a high A person, that means you have high levels of autonomy. High levels of autonomy describe you as your strategic thinker. Because to have autonomy, to have control over your life, you got to think in the future. So you're forward thinking. You want to be able to control it, be independent. All of this also makes you a little bit more direct and assertive as well. I actually have a whole lot of high A's on this call. Let me see who's my highest. Elizabeth, you're up there. You're pretty high. Did these words resonate with you?
Definitely. My previous corporate career was program management, creative operations. So thinking very ahead, and even what I do now, how do I take someone where they are, where they want to be, and bridge that?
Yeah. Trying to see who else we have that's a high A. Okay, on the flip side, Guadalupe, did any of these words resonate to you?
Yeah, for me, it's like very, very interesting to see that because I believe that I'm like very independent and forward thinking. Maybe not that much assertive, but yeah.
Interesting. And Guadalupe is actually at the opposite end of the scale with her A trait.
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm curious why you think that you are a forward thinker. Where does that show up and come from?
Um, like thinking about work, like I bring like the new strategies like to fruition. I bring the like what we should be doing and planning. So I'm also like, as a chief of staff, thinking about the future, planning like 6 months ahead of where we are. Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm curious if this other half resonates more with you. Let me get back to my other tab. So if you're a low A person, these are some of the words that I would say resonate with you more. You're humble, you're responsive, you're a team player, and you're present thinking.
That too. I would say like 4 of them.
Okay.
Wow.
So what I'm hearing from Guadalupe is, can she write with her left hand? Yes. So can she think forward? Absolutely. I'm not saying she can't. But what resonates most with her, 4 out of 4, her low A traits. Her low A is sitting 4 centiles or 4 marks to the left of the red line. That gives you an idea.
Lauren, quick question. What determines
Any questions
where
about
the
the A
red line?
trait before we move on?
Yeah, sorry, I'm not sure if I'm on here.
Gary, I think you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Yeah. Oh, it should be
I
here.
can hear Gary.
Oh, wait, there it goes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, what determines the position of the red line? I mean, is that for each individual it's different?
Yeah, so it's loosely correlated to your EU number. So if you notice, as your EU goes up, so does the red line. It goes down, so does the red line. It's a average of all 4 of your dots as well. So if you added up your
Okay.
A plus your B plus your C plus your D, that's
Yeah.
where. So if you selected a lot more A dot or A words, it's going to increase that A trait, which then is going to pull your average up, right?
Okay.
So, and this is Eric, a real quick clarifying question. So again, a high A, like mine is right on the red line. So that would be a high A, right?
Let me pull yours up so I can see it, Eric. Yeah, yours is right on the red line. So remember what we said about the red line, it's normative, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So for you, I would say that you get to pick. So some days Eric's going to show up as my high A, and then some days Eric's going to show up as my low A. You're a chameleon in that regard.
Yeah, I was going to say, because both sides of it resonated with me. And that's why I was like, oh, you put up the first one. I'm like, oh, yeah, that totally is me. And then I'm like, oh, but wait a minute. Some of those on the other one resonate too. So, okay. Thank you.
For sure.
Question on mine, because mine is like between 0 and 1, my red line. Is it?
Is that Julia's
Yeah,
speaking?
yeah, Julia, sorry.
Yeah, yours is 0.25 away, so you're gonna lean naturally more towards the high A side. But remember when I said the further away it gets, the more these words resonate. You're gonna more resonate with the high side. However, because it's so close to the line, it's not gonna flex or be that hard for you to go to the left side. So some of those words also might be like, yeah, I could see where I do that a lot. You're able to flex to the other side, if that makes sense.
I guess I'm more wondering, why is my line between the 0 and 1? Like, it's so far and there's everything just varies slightly on
Yeah.
mine.
So your EU is at 9, which means you selected much less numbers, or
Okay.
sorry, words overall,
Words.
which
Okay.
decreases the ability for us to say, like, you're for sure a super high A. Because my super high A people selected a ton of autonomous words. So it brought that average up. Or my super low D selected almost 0 detail orientation words. So it's the amount of words you select and how many you have of it.
Okay. Thank you.
Lauren, I
Anyhow.
have a question.
Yep.
Is the survey based upon just a person's like present state? I mean, could these numbers actually change if if somebody's in a different life stage, different, like, just
That's what that
mindset?
second graph depicts.
Mm,
So the top one is who you naturally are. That's what you were describing, is like who you are. And your bottom one is how you're modifying that part of yourself. So definitely season of life, phase of life, job role. I mean, traumatic things that are happening in life, all of that plays into that second modification piece. Okay, moving on, B trait. We good? Okay. I gotta get back to my presentation. Okay, social ability. This one is easily described as introvert versus extrovert, but there's a lot more to unpack than just that. So high B people, these are my people that are more outgoing, they're more optimistic by nature, charismatic. Another common trait of high B people is that they're going to think outwardly. So, if you've ever been in a meeting with a high B person, maybe they've spouted out a bunch of ideas, but they didn't mean any of them. They just needed to get it all off their chest to somebody else. That's a representation of a high B. So they don't always mean what they say, they're just trying to get it out loud because that's the way they process and think, is outside of their body. Any questions with that? Okay. Low B people. Well, apologies, all my tabs. Low B people are going to be on the opposite end of that. They're more reserved by nature, more guarded. They're more direct. They're more introspective. So, Gary, you were talking about the cultural differences between you and some of the people that you interact with. You are a low B, just barely, but you are a low B. And so you're naturally more introspective with your ideas. You're more guarded and reserved. Because of that, you're also more direct by nature. And the people you're described are a lot more charismatic, a lot more maybe emotion driven, and you have to be very sensitive of how you go about speaking to them to ensure that they get the point and not something else out of it, right?
Right.
So that might be something to consider, is when you're speaking to someone, how high is that B trait? Like, what have you observed, in those people, and how far away from your B trait does it fit in? And sometimes the easiest thing with high B people, just start with small talk. It's not our nature as low B people to do that, but just ask them how their day is. Ask them about their mom or their kid or what they did this weekend. Just start with something like that, because that emotional rapport immediately speaks to those heartstrings of the high B. It's a quick way to get them on board with you, and then you can get direct real fast. But because you built that rapport for just a couple minutes, they're going to respect you a lot more.
No, exactly that. If you're in a meeting, people like to talk about personal stuff.
Yep.
For the first 10 minutes of the meeting, and I'm kind of, well, let's get to work. And
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Excellent.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Pace. So pace is one of those where in my head it's actually backwards on the scale, so bear with me. This is actually measuring patience. If you say it that way, it helps. And I say that because you would think high pace would be someone that's fast, but it's actually opposite. So high patience is on the high side. So if you have a high C, you are somebody who is very patient, methodical, unhurried. These are the people where I like to use the phrase, if you have a high C, this will resonate with you hopefully. You like to plan your work and then work your plan. My husband has a high C business partner and he's a very low C, so very opposite of all of this. And he looked at me the other day and said, "Oh my gosh, I never realized you were right until the other day when it finally hit me. The reason my business partner struggles so much is because I don't give him an agenda or a plan, so he doesn't know how to work." I'm like, yeah, he needs to plan his work so that he can then work his plan. And then on the opposite side, my husband is very impatient. He enjoys variety, so he likes putting out fires, jumping from task to task, or maybe doing 3 tasks at once, even though it's not very good oftentimes. It's still getting done. And these people are very fast-paced. Any thoughts on that? Any questions? I know I'm going quickly through these because we don't have much time, so I'm trying to get through all of it. Elizabeth, did you have I saw you come off mute. You can speak. We're good.
I was just going to say, I do feel like there is an element of change because I feel like in the past I used to be very fast paced, very impatient, move, 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 go, go, go. And through doing my own personal work and, believing in divine timing and everything sort of happens and how to attract versus power versus force type of situation, I'm now on the higher end of C. So I think there is something interesting of just like the more that you reflect, you kind of go back to your natural state, but we've been conditioned to be a little different maybe through the corporate setting.
Well, something interesting about your pattern. So a lot of philosophers I hear say that exact thing actually. And that's because you have a high A, but a very low D, which we'll cover in just a minute. But basically, if I were to say, hey, we're going to go out and sail the seas together, I'm very high A and a high D, which means I'm going to come very, very, very prepared so that I mitigate all risk. Risk doesn't bother you. You don't mind taking a ton of risk. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, we're headed to Italy next month, and my partner knows everything, and I'm like, I'm just showing up, and I'm gonna have a good time.
Exactly. So, because of that, it seems as if your pace is actually fairly quick, but in reality, you're taking your time and you're ruminating on the things that need to get done. You're planning it out over time, but when it comes time to do it, you're like, okay, it's time to do it now. And so it seems quick to other people because there's very little like risk aversion. So you're just moving. So it looks fast to others, or it seems fast in comparison to like the risk ability, but really it's no, I had this idea, months ago. I just now acted on it.
Okay, that's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else before we move on? Okay. D trait. Conformity. So my high D people, the more high D you have, the more you resonate with this. The higher D, you are more detailed. Because of that, you love knowledge. Knowledge is power, which means you are more historical by nature because history provides us data points. It provides us knowledge, right? So the more data, the more knowledge we have, the better the decisions. Bulky, you really, really love data. You love to follow the rules and do it well with high quality, high control. Does that sound accurate?
Close. I have to see the other side.
Okay, you got to see the other side. That's fair enough. Okay, I think he might have just proved my point though. How much knowledge before you're certain that it's correct, right? He needs to see all the knowledge before he can say, yeah, that's accurate. So thank you. He's not a paid actor, I promise. So on the other side of things, you are more casual, free-spirited. You love to delegate. How much does delegation make you want to cringe, Bulky?
I'm comfortable as an engineer, that's on a spectrum for sure, but I'm comfortable with delegation.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I
Okay.
could do more for sure. Yes, I can do a lot more.
And when you delegate, do you just say, hey, here's a task, go do it? Or does it come with instructions and information and knowledge first?
Yeah, the latter.
Yeah. Yeah. All the details, all the knowledge, because he wants to make sure you have the highest chance of getting it right. Right? So if I'm going to delegate, it's because I gave you the exact tools to do it correctly. Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So that's the D trait. I'm good to move on. Any other questions, comments? Okay. I keep pressing next on the Zoom call, thinking it's going to click, but it won't. Okay, so logic. Again, notice these are segmented, so these are not on the normative scale any longer, so they're not on the bell curve, but rather it still is a scale. So my 0 to 2 people, you're more emotionally driven, so you're a heart thinker. And then my 8 to 10 people, you're more logic driven, so you're brain thinkers. And then 3 to 7 is the normative range, so you level out the heart and the head, obviously getting more heart as you go down and more head as you go up. What this physically looks like and plays out, a good example of this is if you had to fire somebody. If you're on the low emotional driven side, then you're somebody who is going to put heart into it. And so if I said, hey, go fire this person, you're probably gonna be like, oh, but I don't know if I can do it because they're really emotional sitting in front of me and I like their granddad and they just had a baby. And you're gonna try to find every reason to emotionally not do it. You're filtering first with your emotions. Versus on the logic driven side, if I say, hey, go fire that person, they're gonna be like, they didn't do their job. And they're like, nope, didn't do their job. I'd be like, all right, done. And they just fire the person. They may have a high B into them. So they may be like, oh, that hurts my feelings because I don't really want to give anybody a firing notice. But at the end of the day, they're still able to do it. So I say this is your first filter. What are you going to first immediate reaction do? I like to think about in a crisis. What's the first thing that comes to mind? Heart or logic? And that's what this scale is. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay. Ingenuity is measuring your abstract, raw inventiveness. So 0 to 6 is my normal range, obviously getting more ingenuous, if you will, as you go up. And then 7 to 10 is your higher range. So these are your people who, the more 10 people are like Picasso, Walt Disney, Albert Einstein. I mean, their minds were just so out there thinking that you can't even fathom where the idea came from. Versus the further you get to 0, the more literal that you become. So all of your ideas are more practical and literal by nature. They're not like this abstract concept that you can't understand. These are the people who, when something new happens in the government or in the world, like when COVID hits all of a sudden and you're having to reconfigure your entire business, you want high ingenuity people on your team because they have to come up with something that's never been done before. They've got to be so out there in the stream of consciousness that they can come up with these ideas. So these people are super important for your overall like development because they're going to help you problem solve something without parameters, without reality at play. In the same regard, high ingenuity also comes with a little bit of trust because you got to trust that it's not an insane idea that you've never heard of. So you've got to be able to like risk mitigate for sure. Okay. All right, moving on. Mental stamina, aka EUs, which stands for energy units. So this energy unit metric basically tells you how much gas you have in your tank each day. This is also your battery pack for life. So if you notice, obviously you have a second graph. So I really love using the EUs as a segue to compare the two graphs because this can tell us one of two things. Either you're underutilized or you're overutilized, or maybe you're right there at it, aligned with the top and bottom number. So this number, I like to say if it's plus or minus about 5 to 7%, we probably should question it. We probably should question why is this happening and how can we help it because this is on the track to losing a good employee. So if you notice, like on the left side, it's underutilization. So it went from 62 to 51. So they're showing up with 62 miles until empty in their car. But then you're only asking them to go 51. So then they go home at the end of the day and they're like, man, I only used 51. Where else can I go? Which then becomes in the middle of the day, I'm daydreaming and thinking, where am I going to take my car this afternoon? Because I know I'm not going to use all my gas here. So that results in disengagement. And on the flip side, if I'm saying, hey, you got 35 miles to empty, however, at work you have to go 51. When you run out of gas and you're pushing your car down the side of the road, that's kind of like riding with your left hand, right? Or riding with your non-dominant hand. You get fatigued, your quality and productivity and morale just plummets. And the more time you do it, it compounds over time. So if I have to ask you to push your car on the side of the road the first day, you may do it with a smile on your face. You may even do it with your smile on your face for about a week. But that's going to compound over time to the point where eventually you can't do it anymore. So all stress is still stress at the end of the day. And that's what this reflects. Okay. Any questions?
I put a question in the chat. I guess I'm more curious about the EU number, if it's out of 100. And if so, if we're looking at the example, what does it mean that it's only at 62?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The metric goes all the way up to 100, so 0 to 100 is the scale. Most people I see are in the 20 to 40 range, so I would say like the average or normative is 20 to 40. I like to compare the 20 to 40 range more to your like 8-hour workday people. They can do their 8-hour workday and they're just fine. The higher the EU, the more, or like, I guess, yeah, the more battery pack you have, the more miles to empty that I can push you to go before you run out of that and need more gas. So it's really just your metric for like, when do I need to take that break? When do I need to reset? Okay. All right. We have a couple more minutes left, so let's wrap this thing up. So what does this mean? How do we use this? Now that you know how to read the graph, let's compare them. So now zoom out and I want you to look at your top and your bottom graphs. First question I want you to ask, where are you currently stretching in your work? So look at your traits and remember, this is a good reminder to do not look at the number that your traits are sitting on, but rather how far away from the red line they are. So did it go from being a +1 to a +4? Did it go from being a +4 to a -2? Look at that change because that's going to tell you where you're stretching the most in your work currently. Then after, I want you to digest and figure out, okay, now that I know about my natural self and where I'm stretching, let's think about 2 direct ways that you can lean into your strengths more at work tomorrow. So this is not a how can I grow as a person tomorrow, but rather how can I be more natural and make it a strength for my position tomorrow?
Mm.
Because a lot of times we walk away from this going, how can I be the other? How can I be the opposite of what I am? But as we saw with our non-dominant hand, there's not really many pluses to that. You know, we've become more tolerant to it, but why wouldn't we want to hone in on those strengths that we were created to have? So think about that, stew on that. May you see the A slide again. Yes.
And
So,
Lauren, Julia had a question too.
oh, sorry, I looked over that. Can I take the test again and send me the results? Yes. Julia, did I send you? I may have sent it again or sent it already to you. Make sure you don't have it in your email, and if not, let me know. Okay. So this is your homework to figure out, you know, what are the ways, again, not to grow, not to become a left-handed writer, or if you're right-handed or left-handed or right-handed writer, right? Not how do we do that, but rather, what are areas that we can grow in the sense of putting our strengths in front of us and really acting in that, because that's who we're designed to be. Okay. And then I got a couple more slides and then we're done. So applications, so you probably saw my description, you're thinking, this was supposed to be about business and how do I help with my employees? And I got on here and now I learned a lot about myself. What does that even mean? So I'm going to go through some quick applications of actually what do we do in the workplace and how does this apply? And there's 4 of those. First and foremost, this helps us maximize the ROI on our talent. You probably heard that fun term ROI 1,000 times, but this helps us do it on our talent. So you're paying these people a salary. What for? What are they bringing to the table? And how do we ensure that we're getting the most out of our people? And this goes as far as to say, how are we motivating them? Is it in line with who they naturally are and what speaks to their true motivations? How are we communicating with them? Is it the most efficient that it can be? How are we training them? What job task am I asking them to do? And is that job task stretching and making it a non-dominant trait that they're having to flex to, or is it something that they naturally are great at? Because remember, when we do non-dominant stuff, we get lower quality, productivity, and morale. Second, we help with recruiting, objective recruiting. So when you're thinking about when you're trying to hire someone, how many times is it guesswork of who you're interviewing? Because people just turn it on all the time and then you show up and you're like, who is this guy? This is not who I interviewed. Or if you're in more technical spaces, which I know a lot of you are, a lot of times technical people are more direct by nature and they don't interview very well but they're incredible at their jobs. So this takes that subjectivity and gut out of it and emotional reaction out of it and makes it objective. 3, talent retention. The happier you are, the more you're riding with your dominant hand, the more you're going to like your job and the more you're going to want to stay. And then 4, quality assurance. Why would I put somebody with very low detail orientation on a job that requires high attention to rules, policies, and procedures and protocols? We measure that and we help you identify who's going to be those problem children to ensure that your quality remains as high as it can be. So that's how we work in the workplace and how we use these 2 graphs to help you with your leadership decisions and inside of your companies. Next steps, this kind of gives us a segue, Kim, of what we're going to do after this call, because I could talk about this for hours and hours on end. But what I encourage you all to do, if you're an individual, so fractional CTO, CFO, breakup artist, whatever your title is, if you're more an individual and you're not necessarily leading a team, I would love to connect with you personally for a 30-minute development session to walk you through your job behaviors and maybe answer any of those questions that you didn't want to ask today or we didn't have an opportunity to talk about today. We can dive in it much deeper. So feel free to sign up with that. And Kim, do you have the links to drop in the chat? Perfect. So there's 2 different links. There's an individual one, and then there's a team discovery call. So the second one is if you are leading a team or you're going to be leading a team, so maybe you're in the startup phase and you're going to be leading a team and you have some ideas of those people, we do something called a team diagnostic. This is a $2,000 value almost, and I would love to offer it to anybody who signs up for this interest meeting today for free. So I would love to help you survey 15 employees, and for some of you guys, if you're in startup phase, that might be your whole team, where we could survey your whole team and figure out, who do you have on your roster and what are those strengths and how are they showing up. So those links are in the chat, and they'll also be sent in the chat afterwards as well from Kim, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, in our internal chat, I'll be sending that. And Lauren, just want to make sure, thank you so much. If you want to get in touch with her, Lauren is sharing on the screen her email address, her phone number. I will also be including in the internal message as well, in the internal chat that we have, all her contact information. If Lauren, you don't mind, if you can allow me to share my screen, I just want to make sure that we get the QR code up for today's session's survey. So that way, anybody who has feedback, commentary, we can get that out. Awesome. So I have included in the link for today, or I've included in the chat, the link for today's survey. Please make sure you complete that. In addition, on my screen, you should be seeing the QR code for the survey as well. If you could please complete that, you know the drill. We would greatly appreciate it. Any last words, Lauren?
I don't think so. If you had any issues with your survey and you want to talk more about it, one of those individual or even the team call is a great time to do that. So just let me know ahead of time, and yeah, I'd love to speak with any of you.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. And Lauren, thank you so much. This was such an interesting session, gave us a bit more insight into who we are, how we can benchmark that and think about our teammates and the culture a bit more thoughtfully as to how we show up and how we can really lean into our strengths. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And thank you everybody for joining us and for participating and being very, very engaged today. Thank you, everybody.